Background and quick summary. I am a longtime lurker on unresolved mysteries but just recently joined Reddit to post about this case, which I've come back to over the years hoping for new information. Usually I have one clear theory in a case about who did it, but here it could have gone several different ways and I think they are all completely plausible. Basically there are a lot of jerks in the room and the question is, which one of those jerks, if any, would hurt and or dispose of Lauren? Every podcast about Lauren's case has really annoyed me in one way or another, so I wanted to offer my perspective. There are areas where I think the focus is misplaced and others that I don't think get enough attention because some or maybe even all the points mentioned in this post had nothing to do with Lauren's disappearance. I can't bring myself to use their last names and contribute to yet another bad Google result for them, even though they are jerks. This information is easily available in articles and in other posts for anyone who finds it helpful. Long story short, and I'm sorry if I mess up any details, Lauren Spierer was an Indiana University student who went missing from Bloomington, Indiana in the early morning hours of June 3, 2011. She was with various people at her longtime friend Jay's apartment at around 12:30 a.m. and then went out alone with Corey, a recent acquaintance. Lauren, who had a heart condition, long QT, was drunk and possibly snorted pills and or cocaine at some point in the night. Lauren and Corey ended up at Kilroy's sports bar around 1:46 a.m. The two left Kilroy's at around 2:27 a.m. and headed to Lauren's apartment building, Smallwood. Lauren left her shoes and phone behind at Kilroy's. She would have taken off her shoes because Kilroy's had a sand-covered patio. Corey and Lauren never made it inside Lauren's apartment because they were intercepted by a guy named Zach and his crew at Smallwood. Corey was punched in the face during this altercation. Corey and Lauren then left Lauren's building and headed to Corey's apartment. On the way, Lauren was caught on surveillance video stumbling and witnesses saw her falling hard multiple times. Corey eventually picked her up and carried her. Lauren dropped her keys and purse in an alley. They arrived at Corey's apartment and Corey's roommate, Mike, was there. Mike said that Corey vomited and had to be taken to bed. According to Mike, Lauren wanted to go back to her own apartment and wanted Mike to drink with her there. Mike called Jay, who lived 2 doors down, so that Jay could take care of her. Recall that Lauren, Corey, and, I believe, Mike had all been at Jay's earlier in the night. At this point, Mike either walked her to Jay's or Lauren went on her own. I've seen conflicting info on this. Jay confirms that Lauren came to his apartment. Jay says he tried to get Lauren to stay at his place, but Lauren insisted that she wanted to go home. 2 calls are placed from Jay's phone and Jay says Lauren made these calls, one to her friend David R., who had been with her at Jay's earlier in the night, and the other to a different male friend. Neither person answered their phone and no messages were left. Jay says that he watched Lauren walking away from his building at approximately 4:30 a.m. on June 3, 2011. This is the last reported sighting of Lauren. Later that morning, Lauren's boyfriend Jesse messaged Lauren's phone and a Kilroy's employee responded. Jesse and Lauren's roommate checked Lauren's apartment and Lauren was not there. Jesse called police and reported Lauren missing that day. Corey is the least likely to be involved. I get why Corey is the focus of most of the discussion. Lauren spent much of her night alone with him, and he acted like a fool. He carried her around when he should have taken her home, but to be fair, they were nearly at Lauren's apartment before being interrupted by Zach and maybe she wanted to get out of there after that. Corey was either too drunk/concussed to notice Lauren falling all over the place or just didn't care. It was not a good showing by Corey, to be sure. However, the question at issue is where's Lauren? And Corey is almost certainly not responsible for Lauren's disappearance based on the known chain of events. Not only did roommate Mike say that Corey vomited and had to be escorted to bed, maybe a combination of being drunk and getting punched, but neighbor Jay then confirms Mike's story and admits to being the last person to see Lauren alive. Jay does not indicate that either Mike or Corey were with him when he watched Lauren leave his apartment. This means that for Corey and Mike to be involved, they and Jay and everyone at Jay's apartment would all have to be working together. It would have been something like this: Corey and Lauren show up at Corey's place, grab Mike, and all 3 of them to go Jay's. Then Lauren dies at Jay's and they all agree to cover it up. It's also possible that Mike's phone call to Jay was not a request for Jay to help take care of a drunk and annoying Lauren, but for help addressing a more serious emergency at Mike and Corey's apartment involving Lauren. But if that were the case, why would Jay then make himself the last person to see Lauren alive if the emergency happened outside of his apartment? Possibly he was worried about the drug angle if he was involved in supplying those to her, but I doubt he would put himself and only himself at the center of this case. A conspiracy with Corey, Mike, and Jay all involved is difficult for me to get on board with. It's been 7 years and no one has said anything. If Lauren died due to drug use or an accident, I cannot see them all agreeing to cover up her death forever. The risk of being held responsible for her death was just not that high for all of them. They did not all individually give her the drugs, if that was the issue. Even if one or some of them assaulted or killed her, why would the rest keep quiet for all this time? I find the conspiracy/cover-up scenario unlikely unless it is completely confined to Jay and whoever was staying with him. It is true that Lauren's time with Corey is very important for establishing her level of intoxication, her possible head injuries, and a potential motive for Jesse, discussed later. But it seems unlikely that Corey and Mike were involved in her disappearance based on the known facts. Is there a tiny chance that one of them crept back out to reunite with Lauren as she walked home and caused her harm? Sure. But they had no reason to do so. Corey had already peaced out and Mike had already passed her off to Jay, as confirmed by Jay. So in my mind, Corey and Mike are not very likely to know where Lauren is. If they do know something, then Jay absolutely knows too. This leaves me with three paths: Jay and whoever was with him, Lauren's boyfriend Jesse, or a stranger. Jay and guests. Apparently Jay had a guest, David B., or guests staying at his apartment that night. It's possible that Lauren died or appeared to have died in Jay's apartment due to drugs, her heart condition, or from falling and hitting her head earlier, and he panicked. Maybe Jay was nervous because he had provided her with drugs, or maybe someone in the house got violent with her. Like I said before, I do think that if Jay got rid of her or set that plan into motion, he most likely did it without Corey and Mike. What implicates Jay? He was admittedly the last person to see Lauren alive. And people always say it seems crazy to have let her walk home alone in her condition. No shoes, no phone, no wallet or keys, not sure if he knew about the wallet or keys. On the other hand, maybe Jay, like Corey, is thoughtless and or was drunk or didn't want to fight with her about it. I can accept that he would let her go home, and if Mike's story is true, it sounds like Lauren was still showing some energy and a desire to keep the party going. He had known her a long time. Maybe he thought she was fine to walk the short distance. On the other hand, he could be absolutely guilty and his story could sound good because there are grains of truth in it. For example, he says he asked Lauren about a bruise on her face. Everything he said might be true up until the point that it's not. Even though Jay did confirm Mike's story, effectively exonerating Mike and Corey, he really had no choice. There was no good way to deny that Lauren ended up back at his place. Something I'm not clear on that I'd like to know. Was the party still going at Jay's when she arrived? If so, that would make it more likely that Lauren ran into some misadventure there. But I've seen it mentioned that Jay claims his guest, David B., was sleeping when Lauren arrived. If Jay is telling the truth, it would indicate there was nothing going on at the time. Of course, that all means nothing if he's lying. I've never really liked the accident/panic and dispose theory, but I can see why it's the most popular. Do I think this is what happened? I don't know, but the heart condition, the fall/bruise, and the alleged drug use are all circumstantial evidence of an accidental death and ensuing panic. I don't know if I believe it, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if some version of this happened. Jesse. On the night Lauren disappeared, Jesse was at home watching a basketball game with others, and then he says he went to bed around 2:30 a.m. We don't know what Lauren's and Jesse's relationship was like that night. It may have been perfectly normal for Lauren to go out drinking with male friends without Jesse. On the other hand, it's possible that they were having problems and she was happy to be away from him and with Corey. At least one article mentions that Corey was romantically interested in Lauren, but we don't know whether Lauren had any interest in Corey. It's possible, but it's also possible that Lauren would have gone to Kilroy's with anyone at Jay's party who was willing to go with her. I would love to know if and to what extent Lauren was in contact with Jesse that night. Did she check in with him before she left her phone at Kilroy's? Was he the second person she called from Jay's phone? If Jay's story is true and he didn't make those calls himself, and if not, why didn't she call him? It's likely a red herring, but I find Corey's altercation with Zach's crew to be extremely interesting, and I know others have brought this up too. Zach is often commended for trying to step in and stop Corey from taking advantage of Lauren at Smallwood. If that was Zach's motivation, great, but is that really the reason they started something with Corey? Were any of them friends with Jesse and looking out for his interests? And did they, or someone else who saw Lauren with Corey that night, tell Jesse what they saw? I'm not positive whether there was any connection between these people, but a friend of Corey's is quoted in one news article as follows, referring to Corey's memory of that night. He knows that he got in a fight with some of Jesse's friends in Smallwood. I can't find confirmation, but I remember reading somewhere that Jesse's father arrived in Bloomington very quickly, maybe even before Lauren's parents did. If true, this strikes me as somewhat odd. But I can accept that Jesse was worried about Lauren and his father wanted to help his son. But what truly bothers me is Jesse's mother's statement about Lauren. This poor little girl is not with us today because of her drug abuse. To me this sounds like a classic case of the lady doth protest too much. Not only that, it's pretty evil, unless the article completely left out another portion of her statement. Really take it in for a second, she is directly blaming Lauren for everything, and then has the nerve to try and act maternal and call her a poor little girl. Yes, it sounds like Lauren was a bit of a handful, got kicked out of summer camp and partied a lot, whatever. But even if Lauren contributed to her own death, where is she? Does she think Lauren was too inebriated and made herself easy prey? Or does she think Lauren made the mistake of overdosing and her friends, poor little boys, were forced to throw her out like trash? If she believes these things, why isn't she blaming the stranger who abducted her or the friends who disposed of her? Her son is generally not assumed to fall within either of these categories, so you'd think she'd be happy to advocate for the abductor theory or the evil friends theory. But no, her vitriol is reserved for Lauren, and to me that is very telling. She resents Lauren, for what, and why? Does she blame Lauren for dying and disturbing her son's life, or does she blame Lauren for her son jeopardizing his own life? Consider another throwaway remark from her, this time about not trusting the Bloomington police to administer a lie detector test. I don't think they're very adept at anything except giving kids drinking tickets. While this might be 100% true, it suggests a lingering anger at her son's own prior run-ins with the police. Jesse and most of the boys in this case have mugshots for this reason, not because of Lauren's disappearance. Again, there is a troubling cruelty in her words that I cannot discount, and perhaps a refusal to accept that her son did something wrong. Basically, Jesse's mother's statement has led me to associate Jesse with a certain level of dysfunction and has made me more suspicious of him for that reason. But it's not only that. Day in and day out there are news stories about girls and women murdered by enraged, jealous boys and men who are jealous or can't handle that their ex is moving on. It happens so much that we are desensitized to it at this point. It was just a domestic disturbance, there is no danger to the community. To me, Jesse has the clearest motive of anyone in this case, and while I do think it is unlikely that he's the culprit, it should not be dismissed, either. Jesse could have found and harmed Lauren after she left Jay's place. I do hope this isn't true. There is nothing that he has personally done that seems terribly suspicious, and if he is in fact innocent, I feel terrible for what he went through. A stranger. Despite everything I've already said, I think perhaps the most likely scenario is that Lauren was killed by a stranger. One fact supporting this is that Jay's and Jesse's attorneys/family members have indicated that they passed private polygraph tests. We have no idea how trustworthy these private tests are, if at all. But if both Jay and Jesse are in fact telling the truth, it was almost certainly a stranger, unless Lauren ran into someone else she knew. It could have been Daniel Messel, Hannah Wilson's killer, or someone we don't know about yet. If it was Messel, it does seem like Lauren was more intoxicated than Hannah and perhaps easier to overpower. This could explain why Messel got away with Lauren's murder but screwed up with Hannah. Then again, it could have been a completely different killer. There's not much else to say about this theory. The end. This case has interested me from the beginning, even though I don't have much in common with Lauren. Her friends seem like they were terrible and I wouldn't snort Klonopin or cocaine if you paid me. But I can see how immaterial all that is and how people have let it cloud their perceptions of this case. Most of us binge drank and put ourselves at the mercy of others at that age. We got through it and breathed a sigh of relief when we realized how dumb we had been, but Lauren never got that chance. Nothing she did, if in fact she willingly got herself to that state, justifies the fact that her parents don't know what happened to her and don't have her body. I hope that whoever did this is brought to justice, whether he was a selfish friend, an angry boyfriend, or a random predator. I hope that her parents, and those boys who are innocent, get answers someday.
I think it is possible her death is related to her heart. She was known to have taken Klonopin, which prolongs your QT interval. She had a no prolonged QT and went into cardiac arrest. One thing I've always found out is there are no reports of anyone calling Jesse to come get her. You would think Zach would have for sure. I thought Jay was also friends with Jesse. Do you think if you had a totally drunk girl on your hands you would call her boyfriend to come get her? I hate to be that guy, but it's Indiana University, not University of Indiana. Bloomington is my hometown. I left for college right after her disappearance. Thanks for the excellent write-up. I've since changed my mind and no longer believe that either Mike, Corey, or Jay had anything to do with the disappearance. There's evidence linking her disappearance to them in any way. I agree that the most likely scenario is that despite Jay's better judgment, he allowed the drunk and stubborn victim to leave his apartment unaccompanied. An experienced predator stalking the early morning hours came across Lauren stumbling and capitalized on a crime of opportunity. I would also say that lack of a corpse lends itself to the idea that the perpetrator had experience disposing of bodies. I originally thought overdose was too easy and convenient for a darker crime, but honestly that's most likely the case. However, there's a flaw with this. If she did then why would they hide the body and then not mention anything about it? Why not just leave it as is and give her a funeral with the family? There's more here than what you'd think. I've been following this case, and someone I went to college with, who went to high school with Lauren, posted that she was missing on Facebook back in 2011. I recently came across an IU grad who was a student there when Lauren went missing. I asked him what he thinks happened to her. He said there is a cement site near campus that he believes is where her body is. Chances are she outed and her body is in the cement somewhere. Whoever was responsible most likely didn't want their future in jeopardy if drugs were in play. Didn't want their future in jeopardy if drugs were in play. Didn't want their future in jeopardy if...
So, what's your theory on what happened? Post it in the comments below. Thank you for listening. You can find the original post in r/unresolved mysteries through the link in the description box below. I like being able to listen to posts when I'm busy doing something else and can't read them. So I made this video for anyone who wants to listen to their Reddit posts. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and don't forget to hit the subscribe button below to get more puzzling mysteries. Hit